The story begins with a couple of teenagers walking through a cornfield towards a terrifying scarecrow. Marcy is getting scared and complains to her boyfriend, Chad, saying she wants to go home. He laughs and says he doesn't believe the stories about that place. Furthermore, the purpose of the trip is to scare another couple they know, Nikki and Tyler. Chad shows the mask he brought for the prank and Marcy doesn't find it funny, yet she decides to go along with the revenge plan. Since they have an hour until their victims arrive, the two decide to enjoy some time alone in the barn. However, when Chad goes to climb a ladder, the floor gives way and they end up falling into a kind of basement. Marcy gets a nasty cut on her leg and becomes even more terrified when she sees a bunch of chains around her, which hold a kind of old and broken coffin. With a scream, she says she saw something moving next to her, and Chad crawls over to check. When he turns around to say there's nothing there, a horrific hand suddenly grabs his head. Meanwhile, Nikki and Tyler are arriving at the school bus, where teacher Aaron Harris is waiting for them. Seeing Tyler throw a can on the ground, he tells the boy to pick it up, but he says that's something for very nice people like Aaron himself. Nikki also laughs at the idea, besides greeting the teacher a bit too invasively. Getting on the bus, she also takes liberties with Calvin, a quieter guy who likes to draw. When a boy named Davon offers to throw the can in the trash, Nikki loses her bet with Tyler about the suck-up classmate. Maria arrives asking what time she will be back since she gives piano lessons on Saturdays. The teacher explains that this activity is a punishment for bad behavior and therefore will last the whole day. Inside the bus, Nikki and Tyler don't miss a chance to bother the two shyest students. The last passenger is Beth, who arrives just when Tyler is showing everyone a drawing of Calvin that looks a lot like her. While Aaron collects everyone's cell phones and puts them in the glove compartment, Davon helps hang up the banner announcing the Scarecrow Festival, a traditional town celebration that always takes place days before Halloween. Once he returns, the group is complete and the bus heads to the barn, where we see Marcy is still stuck in the basement trying to get away from something. Arriving at the destination, Beth is scared of the abandoned farm and the boys take the opportunity to scare her. They say the place is haunted by the fearsome scarecrow that has eaten more than 30 victims. Aaron assures them nothing of the sort is true and explains that the property is for sale, which is why this year's festival will be held elsewhere. Their job is to dismantle everything and take it to downtown. Nikki and Tyler complain, but he reminds them they are there because they spread unpleasant photos of their classmates Chad and Marcy. The farm belongs to an old girlfriend of Aaron's, Kristen Miller, who also came to help with the move. When he goes to greet her, Nikki takes the opportunity to steal the bus keys and take the phones from the glove compartment. While something watches the group from inside the barn, Kristen disproves the gruesome rumors about her farm and says such gossip is common when a property stands empty for a long time. Suddenly, Tyler comes out of the cornfield wearing Chad's mask, and Maria nearly dies of fright. He says he found it on the ground, near the barn. Not really believing this, Aaron sends the students ahead while he talks with Kristen. But then, he gets upset to see she invited another ex-boyfriend, Eddie. Kristen wants the two to make amends since they were very good friends until they fought over her. Eddie also gets annoyed seeing the other guy there and decides to leave, but his car won't start and he is forced to stay a little longer. Then Calvin starts screaming for help and everyone rushes over to find the boy tied up. The girls are scared and Davon says it wasn't him. Aaron suspects the troublemaking couple, especially since they are the only two missing. Suddenly, Beth lets out a scream and disappears for a few moments. She returns screaming for help from Kristen, but something pulls her into the cornfield. The adults run after her and Maria stays with Davon near the scarecrow. Calvin decides to leave and ends up getting lost in the field, surrounded by sinister whispers. Kristen manages to find Beth, but then she herself is also attacked. Something starts pulling her rapidly until Aaron arrives and saves her. No one understands what's happening, and they decide to gather in the farmhouse. Calvin stumbles and starts groaning in fear when someone looms over him, but then he sees it's Kristen trying to help him. As soon as everyone enters the house and Kristen closes the door, something begins to pound on the outside, trying to force its way in. They manage to hold the banging with a table, and Calvin starts pleading for Tyler to stop, still thinking it's all his doing. This theory falls apart when they hear a noise in the next room and find Nikki's body hanging in the window. She is pulled away immediately, and everyone rushes to board up that entrance with planks. Since the farm is in a valley, the signal is very poor, and no one can call the police. Davon finds a gun in the basement, but Eddie says they will need more than that to defend themselves from whatever is out there. Although agreeing with the rival, Aaron insists on logical explanations and says it must be some wild animal. This doesn't convince the younger ones, and Calvin starts to make a drawing bringing together what each of them saw briefly in the cornfield. When he finishes the drawing, Beth starts screaming and shows everyone the result. No one else wants to be trapped there with that kind of creature lurking. Aaron offers to bring the bus to the door, but Maria has bad news about that. She tells him she saw Nikki taking the phones from the glove compartment and saw her putting the bus key in her pocket. Since Kristen's car is stuck between the other two, the only hope is that Eddie can get his pickup truck running. Being responsible for the students' safety, Aaron decides to go in his place. Beth begs him to come back for them, but the back of the pickup isn't very safe, so the plan is to go into town to bring help. Seeing Beth very nervous, Calvin decides to save the day and climbs out the window, reaching the pickup before Aaron uncovers the front door. A shadow approaches the boy as he tries to start the engine, unsuccessfully. Noticing the movement towards the car, Eddie tries to use the shotgun, but it goes off and knocks him to the ground. Then, a horrid creature emerges from the cornfield and grabs Calvin's face, pulling the boy through the window. When Kristen and Aaron arrive, he is already on the ground and the malevolent entity begins to reveal itself. Kristen throws a flaming bottle at it, and the car starts to catch fire. Seeing that the other young people have also left, she tells them to go back inside the house. But to her astonishment, the entity has already moved and is now crossing the porch roof. With little choice, they run to the barn as the pickup explodes and the scarecrow devours what remains of Calvin. As soon as they enter, the rest of the floor gives way under their weight, and they all land in that macabre basement. Observing the heavy chains, Aaron deduces that the creature was trapped there at some point. Beth screams upon finding Mercy's remains, and the others soon discover Tyler hanging from the ceiling. After they recover from the fright, Beth gets angry and starts blaming Kristen for the tragedies. She had sworn that the legends were nonsense and that nothing bad ever happened there. Aaron tries to defend her, but Kristen says it doesn't matter. The scarecrow is still loose, and the focus now is to get out of this alive. Aaron and Eddie work together to secure a rope, and everyone climbs up it to the entrance of the barn. Kristen smiles upon hearing sirens and warns that the police are coming, probably because someone heard the explosion. The creature is inside the house when Officer Morris goes to the door, asking if anyone is hurt in there. Kristen runs over and says he shouldn't go in. Aaron and Eddie try to explain that none of this is their fault, but Morris finds the situation strange and orders them to lower their weapons. Then Aaron sees the creature emerging from the ground right next to Morris. While the rest runs, the officer stands in shock at the appearance and even manages to shoot, but this doesn't stop it. Morris runs into the house, and the thing pursues him with a steady stride. Moments later, everyone hears his screams of despair and knows their savior is gone. Realizing that the police car is now the only available transportation, Aaron and Eddie decide to go into the house to grab Morris' keys. They tell Kristen to wait in the car, but she can't stand the worry about her ex-boyfriends and goes after the two. Morris' body collapses in front of her as soon as she enters. Eddie is looking for the keys when a monstrous hand bursts through the wall and grabs Kristen's head. Tired of waiting in the barn, the three students reach the squad car, and Davon grabs a gun to help the adults. Aaron manages to free Kristen, but the scarecrow is already right behind him when Davon arrives shooting. The creature shoves Aaron aside and disappears behind a door. Determined to put an end to it once and for all, the boy breaks through the door and says there's nothing there. However, the creature is spread across the ceiling and surprise attacks Davon. Seeing that there's no way to save him, Aaron runs out of the house and tells the others to get in the squad car. The creature watches through the boards as its prey moves away. Besides the three adults, only Maria and Beth are left. Now that the existence of the evil scarecrow has been established, the group starts questioning the local traditions, as it is in very bad taste to celebrate something so abominable. But then the girls begin to sing the festival song, and they realize that the reason for the celebration is not the scarecrow itself, but its defeat. A specific part of the lyrics teaches that it must be buried during the fall so that it doesn't hurt anyone. This revelation doesn't help much when the said scarecrow appears in the middle of the road, causing the car to crash. Aaron smells gasoline and tells everyone to get out of the vehicle. Eddie was the one who fared the worst in the accident and asks for a moment to recover. Less resentful now, Aaron says that at least he ran over the scarecrow. Beth also thinks the monster is dead, but we see its hand coming out of the ground beneath the car. Only then does Aaron realize that Eddie is in very bad shape and asks Kristen to help save him. As she approaches, the scarecrow grabs her leg. Aaron immediately goes to her and tries to pull her away from the car. Eddie opens the door and lets himself drop to the ground, right next to the scarecrow. He has a lighter in his hand and screams for Aaron to get Kristen away. The moment he manages to free her, Eddie throws himself into the spilled fuel. The girls are already far away when the explosion occurs. When Aaron and Kristen reach Maria, she explains that there is another farm nearby that has its light on. She says Beth is waiting at the gate, but when they get there, there's no one. That's because she is already knocking on the door, begging to use the phone. Maria gets mad and accuses her friend of trying to save herself without thinking of the others, but Beth swears she only came to the door because she saw someone inside. Aaron knows the farm's owner, named Frank, and finds it a bit strange that he isn't home. The girls say that maybe the scarecrow had already passed by there and think it's better to try the next farm, but Kristen refuses to leave before using a phone. So they force the entrance and spread out around the house to search. Beth starts screaming when a door slams open, but it's the farmer, Frank, who comes out. He is armed and tells them all to leave his house, ignoring the girls' pleas. Only when Kristen says her last name does he begin to take the matter seriously. He remembers what his parents told him about the Miller farm, where Kristen's great-grandfather buried the scarecrow over 100 years ago. He lets them use the phone, but Kristen discovers it is not working. Furthermore, Frank warns that the police won't be able to stop that terrible creature that almost wiped out her entire family. At this moment, Frank's dogs start barking, which soon turns to whines and then silence. In light of this, he becomes furious with the visitors for bringing the scarecrow to his home and decides to run away, forbidding the group from following him. Now Beth loses her patience once and for all, as it is becoming increasingly clear that the scarecrow wants a specific person. Every time the group has separated, it has gone after Kristen. Now, Frank's account only confirms her suspicions. Kristen herself says she is right, but Maria and Aaron are shocked when Beth suggests giving her to the enemy so they can save themselves. Seeing that no one supports her plan, she grabs a knife and leaves alone. Kristen starts crying, begging Aaron and Maria to stay away from her, but the two refuse to abandon her. Then they hear gunshots from Frank, who is trying to confront the scarecrow in a nearby shed. The thing appears on the ceiling just as his ammunition runs out and disappears immediately afterward. Frank continues to look up, and it's too late when he feels his feet are trapped. The scarecrow begins to grow inside him until it comes out of his mouth. When Aaron finds a tractor, the others hear Beth's voice calling for help. Maria refuses to help her, remembering that she would never do the same for them, but Kristen refuses to be like Beth. Delaying her own salvation, she goes to look for the girl until she finds her cowering in a corner. The two start to make their way back with difficulty, as Beth seems to be injured. But then she suddenly straightens up and puts the knife to Kristen's throat, calling the scarecrow to come get its gift. Already seeing the long fingers amidst the hay, Aaron grabs a rope and manages to lasso the monster before throwing the other end into the grinder. Kristen pushes Beth away to free herself, and the scarecrow ends up grabbing the wrong leg. It is pulled by the rope toward the blades and drags Beth along with it. No one has the courage to look as she is ground up. After that, Kristen says she saw a motorcycle in the barn, and Aaron tells Maria to wait there while the two go check. Afraid to be alone, she peeks under the tractor to make sure there's nothing. When the two return, saying the motorcycle won't start, the scarecrow's hand comes out of the grinder and closes around Maria's leg. Aaron and Kristen manage to pull her away, and the three flee through the woods, carrying the injured girl. However, the scarecrow soon catches up with them. Kristen tells Aaron that she will have a better chance of escaping if she can run, so she decides to separate from the trio. He doesn't even have a chance to disagree before she runs off in another direction, warning that she will meet them at the river. A few meters ahead, Maria starts to lose strength, and they need to stop because Aaron has to tend to her leg. Meanwhile, Kristen is back at Frank's farm because she has a plan she hasn't shared with Aaron. Making a cut on her hand, she rubs her palm on the heads of various animals on the farm, hoping this will confuse the scarecrow. The sun is already rising when Aaron and Maria need to take another break, as the girl is practically fainting. He is startled to hear twigs snapping and is relieved to see it's Kristen. Her trick seems to have delayed the scarecrow, and now the three can flee to the river. Kristen helps to put Maria on Aaron's back, but just as they are ready to leave, a sharp object pierces Maria, hitting Aaron as well. The two collapse to the ground as the scarecrow begins to emerge behind them. Kristen removes the blade and attacks it, cutting off the monster's head. She helps Aaron to his feet, saying there's no longer any way to help Maria. As the scarecrow begins to reassemble itself, the two finally reach the river. Aaron is too weak to swim, and the bridge is far away, so they decide to try to find a boat in the boat graveyard a little further ahead. However, we can see that the creature hasn't given up on pursuing them and is lurking. When Kristen asks Aaron if he is feeling better, no one responds. She turns around and is very distressed to see that she is alone. Going back a few steps, she finds Aaron collapsed but still conscious. In tears, she makes him promise he won't leave her and begins to carry him toward the boat graveyard. Kristen cheers up upon seeing a guardhouse, but is horrified to discover the watchman has been attacked. Aaron tells her to run to one of the more intact boats while he tries the radio, without success. From the guardhouse, he sees shadows moving strangely along the path Kristen took. He runs to her with effort, and then the scarecrow appears again. Aaron decides to grab it and jumps into the sea along with it. Kristen has already learned her lesson and knows that the scarecrow probably won't drown. For this reason, she grabs an axe before heading to the lower levels of the ship. Hearing groans of pain, she begins to call for Aaron, but no one answers. She continues searching, alert for any strange shadow until she finally hears Aaron whispering her name. Collapsed on the ground, he can barely move and makes a gigantic effort to speak. She tells him everything will be okay and promises to get him out of there, but he is trying to warn her that it's too late. When he manages to say the word run, the scarecrow's arm strikes at him from below, piercing his chest. Kristen is horrified at the scene, but now her anger is greater than her fear. She begins to swing the axe to draw the attention of the thing, calling it for a final confrontation. It shoves Aaron's body aside and begins to rise while she descends the stairs screaming that she will bury it once and for all. Kristen lures the scarecrow to the boiler on the ship and starts a fire before fleeing up the ladder. The creature still holds her foot, but she shakes it off with a kick and manages to close it inside. The ship explodes, and Kristen becomes the sole survivor of this cursed trip.